Saint Lyubov of Ryazan, the Fool for Christ, commemorated February 8th. Saint Lyubov, or Liuba, Semyonova Sukhanovskaya, was a fool for Christ and is considered a special intercessor for the citizens of Ryazan. She was born in Ryazan on August 28, 1852, and lived during the early years of the communist persecution of the Orthodox Church. Liubov was baptized in the Ryazan Church of St. Nicholas Dolgoshaya. She was one of 4 children. Her 2 brothers Basil and Gregory died in 1855, leaving just Liubov and her younger sister Olga, who was born in 1856. Her father Semen died early on, leaving his wife Maria and the 2 girls alone. They moved into a small house and were the poorest in Ryazan. The Sukhanovskys lived in poverty and also had a heavy sorrow. Their beloved daughter Lyubov was paralyzed for 15 years and could neither walk nor stand on her own 2 feet. Her parents had taught her to pray and how to read. Lyubov prayed a great deal and read spiritual books, drawing on these for comfort. In particular, she loved to pray before the family icon of Saint Nicholas. Her pure prayer and her uncomplaining patience in her illness were accepted by the Lord, who revealed his will for Lyubov. One day when she was alone in the house, the God-pleaser Saint Nicholas appeared before her and said, "Get up, Lyubov, go and play the fool." Lyubov stood up, which was a great joy for her mother when she returned home. But then her mother realized that the feat of foolishness was very difficult, and she went to the priest for advice. He listened to her and said, "This is God's will. Do not detain your daughter. Let her go. Let her play the fool. The steps of a man are rightly ordered by the Lord." Psalm 37, verse 23. From that time, Liubov embarked on that very difficult path. Liubov began praying in all the churches of Ryazan, and even went to live for a while at the Kazan monastery for women. Feeling the desire to become an ascetic, she returned to her home and became a recluse. There she remained for 3 years. After this period of intense prayer, she re-entered the world to take upon herself the task of becoming a fool for Christ. She was known all over the city for her great kindness and generosity to the poor. Liubov would enter merchant stores and take whatever she desired. She never paid nor asked permission. She never kept anything for herself, but distributed everything to the needy, knowing in advance what each person needed. Merchants felt that her presence was a blessing upon them and their businesses. She always dressed simply, but in bright colors. Pink was her favorite color. Often she wore a pink headscarf. Before she died, she directed a young woman to line her coffin with pink material. Not being able to find pink cloth, she found pink gauze, which she used instead. In addition to her concern for the poor, Lyubov was noted for her prophetic gift of knowing the future. She was fond of using scissors and paper to cut out things that represented a person's future. She would give these items directly to each person or to a relative. Her predictions were so accurate that people were often fearful when they saw her coming. If they hid their scissors, she would still fashion the items from paper by hand and give them to the person. For example, if someone was to marry, she would fashion a crown, but if someone was to die, she would fashion a coffin. Liubov was also invited to weddings with the intention that her presence would bring happiness to the young, but it was not always like that. One rich Ryazan merchant married off his daughter. Many guests from the bride and groom were invited. The wedding was magnificent. A richly set table, music, flowers, etc. The groom carefully concealed his strong addiction to alcohol, and no one suspected him of being a drunkard. To the amazement of the guests and relatives of the bride, when Liubov, who did not know the groom before, loudly announced at the table, "The bridegroom is a bitter drunkard, and the young one will not be happy." The fun suddenly darkened, and they even regretted inviting the Blessed One. Afterwards, they saw the truthfulness of her words, and they loved and respected her as before. 3 girls were preparing for school exams. They heard about Liubov and decided to go to her and ask how the exams would unfold. They came, but they were afraid to ask. They didn't cross the threshold of her house, and she was already welcoming them. And these came to me, Katya, Shura, and Lida, correctly naming them all, although she did not know them before. She herself began to speak for them. "We will have exams soon, but we are afraid. Fear nothing, everything will come off well." And the girls went away reassured. They passed the exams successfully. Before the abdication of the Tsar in 1917, the Blessed One walked through the streets and repeated, "The walls of Jericho are falling, the walls of Jericho are falling." Only later did people realize what that meant. After the 1917 revolution, Lyubov tried to help the people of Ryazan by telling them of future tragedies in advance and what would be the outcome for each individual involved. Perhaps her best remembered prediction was of the forced closing of the Kazan monastery for women. She foresaw this event long before anyone could imagine this possibility. She took the nuns aside and told each what they would be doing in the future. Many years later, several of these nuns met and related their life stories. All of the saint's predictions had been accurate. She also predicted her own death, and that soldiers would occupy her house after her death. At the beginning of 1920, Lyubov caught a cold, fell ill with pneumonia, and she died on February 8, 1921. She was buried at the sorrowful cemetery in the city of Ryazan. Indeed, her house was later demolished, and a military warehouse was built in its place, where soldiers' equipment was stored. One day, a certain soldier appeared at the cemetery and began to ask where Saint Lyubov was buried. He wanted to put up a cross and a metal fence around her grave. This soldier happened to be very sick, but the doctors could not help him. Saint Lyubov appeared to him in a dream and said, "Do not grieve or worry, but go to Ryazan, find the grave of Lyubov Semyonovna Sukhanovskaya in the cemetery, and enclose it with a fence, and then you shall be healthy and happy." He did as the Blessed One commanded him to do, and he was healed. In gratitude for her help, he visited her grave every year and had a panikhida, memorial service, served for her. In 1992, by the diligence of the Brethren of St. John the Theologian Monastery, a chapel was built at the grave of Blessed Liubov, and on June 10, 1998, her holy relics were transferred to the Church of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker in Yamskaya Sloboda in Ryazan. The memory of Blessed Liubov. Ryazanskaya is celebrated on February 8th, the day of her repose. Troparian, tone 5. You were called Liubov, love, in holy baptism, and you knew the love of Christ in your life. You served God and man with love, and you acquired great boldness. We also resort to you continuously, crying out from the depths of our hearts. Pray to the Lord, O blessed godly wise Lyubov, that he grant peace to the world and great mercy to our souls. Kontakion, tone 3. Healed by Christ's hierarch Nicholas and blessed by him to serve God and people, you took up the cross of foolishness with love and bore it until the end. O holy blessed Liubov, do not forsake us who venerate your holy memory. As you stand with the saints before the throne of the most holy Trinity, praying for the well-being of your land and for the salvation of our souls. Saint Liubov, please intercede for us all.
Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison.